Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making Mississippi and coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Listen, I don't have a lot of quotes today, no big speeches to give today. I'm going to go straight to my guest, someone I've really been looking forward to chatting with, and it's Gerard Gibert. We have a lot in common. We'll share some of that here in just a second, but he's the host of Middays with Gerard Gibert, and someone I've really enjoyed getting to know better through his show. And I'm really pleased to have you with me today, Gerard. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be with you, Ricky.
It's good to see you. Look, we're gonna cover a lot of ground, and frankly, I should have scheduled an entire hour for you and I to visit together. But let's start with Ukraine for the radio audience. Over my shoulder here in the studio, I've got a small Ukrainian flag recognizing my way of sort of, I've prayed a lot about it, thought a lot about it, even written about it, that the peace-loving, freedom-loving people of Ukraine are under siege as we have this show today. And it's a tough time for them, but a great opportunity for America and the rest of the world to sort of come together and see what people are willing to do to fight for freedom. It's an amazing and sad moment in our world history, isn't it, Gerard?
It totally is. And Ricky, I think what makes this particular situation, this conflict, more unique is that we all walk around with a video camera in our hand, including Ukrainians, and they're capturing so much of this on video, and then they're instantly sharing that. And in some cases, we're seeing live interviews from bomb shelters with people that are holed up in there. It's a combination of incredibly informative. You can't do anything without it being captured. But I've seen some interviews, saw one this morning, Ricky, with a young boy, 10, 12 years old or so, on a bus. And he was headed out of town, had just departed from his father, was leaving his father, he and his family, leaving his father behind. His father, being a male, is compelled to fight and stay back. And watching him talk about his father and describe his father as a hero, and tears, of course, coming out of his eyes, it cut my heart out watching that. A young boy, a child, should not have to be separated with their father, and this is all because of one madman's ambitions, unfortunately. So it's the human side of the brutality of war that I think is being played out in our world, on our various media forums, that's different about this.
Well, just like if you think about the role that social media played during the pandemic or any key event since social media has come to be. I talk a lot about it. You're a former tech entrepreneur. You built and sold a very successful technology company. I had a career in media, and then latter part of my career in digital media. Spent a lot of time understanding Facebook algorithms and how the artificial intelligence work. And I have serious concerns about it. And I do think there needs to be some regulation. And I don't think we have smart enough people at the table trying to figure that out. But the reality is, you can think in the old days you could control media. Today you can't. Every person is a reporter, as you pointed out. And as we saw in the case of Ukraine, all you got to do is make one phone call to someone like Elon Musk, and suddenly an entire country has the internet. The reality today is that every person is a reporter, every person has technology, and the fact that Putin would think he could sort of control what people are thinking, it's impossible to do anymore. And I think the role that social media and the internet in general will play on whatever happens on this outcome, it's going to be significant. It may be the most significant, uncontrollable characteristic of this war. And boy, it's certainly bringing the world together around it now. That is for sure, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's, you think about from the perspective of a dictator who needs to control the narrative, who without these technical tools, these technology tools, probably could, with state-owned media and all sorts of restrictions on the dissemination of information. But as you point out, Ricky, when every person walking is essentially a reporter, it's pretty hard to kind of promote your propaganda, if you will, and distribute that. And to get the folks on your side with this crazy propaganda, can't do that anymore, because the eyes and the human senses are the ultimate determinant of the truth. And that's what we have going out here.
It is a very challenging time in our history. Look, I've been really looking forward to chatting with you on the air because we share a lot in common. As I pointed out just a second ago, I came from digital media. You came from technology. We cut our teeth at similar times in the evolution of technology. I had the opportunity to work with some very significant groups. My son works for Price Waterhouse now, but I've worked with Deloitte and KPMG and let's say Accenture and many others. You worked at Anderson. But we spent time early in our careers understanding how to make change happen, whether it might be technological or might be cultural. But you learned a lot early, and you built upon that as you continue to go with your career to the point you end up building your own company. And in my case, I led a lot of very significant change efforts and was able to retire young. And here we are now. I would have never thought in a billion years that I would be on a daily radio show talking to a guy who never in a billion years thought he'd be on a daily radio show, having a conversation about how much we both appreciate and enjoy what we're doing, and hopefully we're giving back, and the opportunity to work for Supertalk, which we'll come back to in a second. But this has been a great journey for you, hasn't it?
It truly has, and you're so right. I never really saw myself in this role, and as you well know, you don't know what God's plans are for you. You just have to trust in that, and just keep getting up every day, as you and I like to do, and try to feel like we're making a difference and contribute value. In this case, to our state and behind this microphone. But before that, I was pretty holed up in my company and trying to make it successful and doing everything we could there to that effort. Did work for Arthur Andersen. Now, by the way, I worked in the division that ultimately became Accenture.
Yes.
So essentially, that was the group that spun off. And, back in those days, it was mainframes and transaction processing systems, and we were automating kind of those brute force back office functions. Certainly didn't see what the internet was going to do. We didn't see these office automation tools. We didn't see personal computers. And when that came onto the scene early on, the personal computer, it really is a major disruptor in our world. I liked it and decided I wanted to be a part of that journey. And that's what I guess drew me to that, and was fortunate to have that career with Andersen, now Accenture, and understanding information technology, but mainly from a business perspective and a commercial perspective. Lord, we certainly didn't see that thing going where it did. And then having sold the company, and I got to tell you, Ricky, I didn't really want to sell the company. That was not by choice, but in pursuing the acquisition strategy that we embarked upon and exchanging equity as part of the deal structure, you end up with a diverse board, and you lose control essentially. That's the resolution that you make, and on a 4-3 vote, the decision was made to sell the company. I'm not bitter about that. I wanted to keep the company going. I was in the 3 that thought the best is ahead, but I understand what was driving my fellow board members, and so on a 4-3 vote, we put the market up. Sale, hired a investment banker out of New York, and went to market and entertained a number of offers there. Had a 16-month process, and then ultimately decided on one of those and sold the company. But as my wife says, you just have to kind of put a bow on that and take some satisfaction in a job well done and move on to the next phase of your career. And that happened to have landed me here at Supertalk. Never saw that, but like you, having fun with it. And I hope that, honestly, Ricky, I hope more than anything that comes through on the air, that we're having fun and we enjoy informing and enjoy and take very seriously this responsibility of being behind this mic, because it is a big one. And I'm obsessed with getting stuff right. I don't bat 1,000 there, obviously. And we have a great audience that'll let you know when you don't. As you well know, but I feel like that is our job, to kind of cut through all the malarkey and to get the stuff right.
What I like about what you are doing, and certainly I've tried to do this in my role, and that is like to use the sum total of all your experience to make judgments. I mean, good, sound, educated judgments about direction, usually around policy, whether it be policy that impacts innovation or entrepreneurship or the economy, and more in particular, the new economy, the emerging economy, and what's going to happen there. What the tax structures and how it affects businesses. And I could just go on and on and on. Your experience there, your depth of understanding there always comes from the point of view of, I've been there. I've had to suffer through things like this. And let me tell you, I know that on the surface it looks like this, but let me tell you how this plays out in the real world. Same thing I've tried to do here. Spent a lifetime trying to understand how to build a strong community, understanding how the local political situation works. People tend to overestimate that, or maybe in some cases underestimate that. But the reality is that sum total of our experience, and in your case, your experience with your midday show, it helps you have a more informed point of view, as opposed to just trying to agitate people and trying to create success, commercial success through division or dividing people. Hey, let's do this. We're coming to the end of this segment, Gerard. We'll pick it up on the other side, but I want to hear your response to that. This is Gerard Gibert. He's someone I've really been looking forward to spending some time with. He has middays with Gerard Gibert and here on Supertalk, and just a terrific guy. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. See you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have my friend Gerard Gibert. He has middays with Gerard Gibert here on Supertalk, and someone I've really looked forward to talking to because he had tremendous success in his career, and then decided to come back and give back in a way by being a host of a show that's part of a incredible network. And we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the network here in just a second. But Gerard, coming back to what I was saying, there is a lot of responsibility that comes from all this experience you've had, and what you've really worked hard to do in layman's terms is make what you're hearing happen from a policy and administrative point of view make sense to people about why we should or should not do something. That's important to you, isn't it?
It very much is, and I kind of feel like I walk a bit of a tightrope there, Ricky, because when I find myself habitually and continuously relating my business experience and my business background to various events and issues on the show, and I don't want to sound like that I'm boasting about that, and I try not to so much talk about, I guess, particular accomplishments, but rather just relate those experiences to policy matters and things we see going on in the state. But on the other hand, I hope that it is perceived by the audience as valuable, a valuable perspective. Someone who, as you well know, has had, as they say, make the payroll or face the prospect, as I have, of bankruptcy, of losing everything you have and everything you work for if you don't make the right call. And so often in the political realm, I guess the worst that can happen is you don't win in the next election. But in business, it might spell bankruptcy like is imminent, in a few weeks, literally. And in my case, in the early days, like a few days, it could, making the wrong call. And so I try to relate some of those experiences in a way that I hope adds to and enhances the discussion. And I've always felt like that something I've used consistently in my business career and even in this role on Supertalk, that faith, confidence, and certainty drive investment, expansion, and job creation. It's simple as that. And this as an entrepreneur, if you don't have faith, confidence, and certainty, your tendency is to hunker down. I'm just not going to do anything until I have some clarity and visibility on in what the future holds to some degree, the best you can. And that's where public policy comes into play, is when you see the extremes being proposed often in public policy, and you start doing the calculations of, man, what would this mean to me? What does this mean to revenues? What does this mean to expenses? What does this mean to the regulatory environment? Go down the list, and when you lack that confidence and some degree of certainty, it's the same as you do in your personal life. You make personal financial decisions based on your faith, confidence, and certainty. If you feel good about your personal economic situation, you may go buy that house, that car, or other major purchase. If you don't, you tend to hunker down and sit tight and wait till that breaks. But that, to me, is the biggest risk of public policy. And you look in our state right now, and you look at this. You touched on it. This debate about income taxes and the tax structure in the state. And we've got two Republican houses, and they couldn't be more unalike in terms of their approach to tax reform. And as a private business, you kind of have this degree of lack of confidence and certainty and vision into what that might look like. And so that can be deleterious in terms of promoting more investment, more expansion, more hiring. You don't know what's coming. The Ukraine situation, that's why the markets are reacting the way they are. What does this mean? And there are ramifications that are far beyond just what's happening inside the borders of Ukraine that affect the entire globe. And of course, that trickles down and transfers here into Mississippi. And so that's the concern. And try to take as best I can some of this complex policy and try to break that down and distill it down to what does this mean to you as an individual? What does this mean to you as a business operator? And so that you can make informed decisions. And if we're able to do that in some small way, then I feel like we're doing our job. Simple as that.
Well, coming back to your point about you want to make sure you thread the needle well as it relates to how you talk about your experience, and then ultimately your point of view about that experience and how it relates to the policy you're talking about. I think you've done a pretty good job of that, and regular listeners would know that it's not boasting. And for anyone who may have forgotten, in order to be successful, particularly if you start out with merely nothing or almost nothing, there's a lot that goes into being successful. A lot of dogged determination, a lot of risk. I can remember I told somebody over the weekend, that was a time in my life after my father passed away that I didn't have a pot to pee in. And it was, my mom came over and she said, you want me to go get groceries for her? I said, no, it's important for me to eat these bologna sandwiches. I really meant it. But you know what I'm talking about? There's a powerful lubrication to change that comes from pain. And that's, that entrepreneur feels a lot of pain, and you're constantly trying to adapt to customers and situation and the technology that's available to you. And I think having that experience for you, Gerard, is really helping you describe things in a way that the average person can understand it when it comes to something as complicated as tax policy. Now, as it relates to our leaders, one of the good things about Coast Vue is not political. And of course, Supertalk Outdoors will only be when it has something to do with conservation. But as a general rule, I'm not writing anymore because I used to write about it, and certainly have been known to be pretty critical. I am disappointed, to be honest with you, that our three leaders can't come together, and that a leader among them is not emerging that can bring them to some common thread as it relates to something like eliminating the income tax, because we're competing with states that have eliminated the income tax. We're not just competing with states, but when you think about the quality of life and quality of living that Mississippi has, and the new economy and the emergence of remote work and how that could serve Mississippi, eliminating the income tax is a serious conversation. And it's not something that we should just be glad we proposed it. We need to be glad we passed something, whatever that is. And I've listened to you carefully as you've tried to sort of work through this one. But and I know you're trying to thread the needle too in terms of the leaders who are engaged in this. But I'm just from where I'm sitting, I'm disappointed they can't get on the same wavelength about this.
Yeah, I agree. And as you probably noted on the show, I've called for just that. Can somebody you guys just get in a room and sort this out? It's time to do this, because right now that doesn't feel like it's happening. I think if it were, we would have something that looks like maybe at least a blend of the two different approaches, but we don't even have that. We just have what appears to be the leaders of the respective chambers dug in, and and the way they see this thing panning out. And I don't know, I've even offered, don't mind saying that, hey, if we could get respective leaders from the two chambers to come here to the studio, I'm happy to moderate an hour show. And just try to cut through their positions and let them state their cases for their various positions, and perhaps ask them some hard questions, both sides, about that, how they arrived at their proposals, and maybe give a different perspective than the kind of one at a time, more asynchronous, to use a technology term, approach to to discussing this. It's a complex topic, and the average listener, they shouldn't have to worry about stuff like this. They just want to know what is my government doing with my money, and if they got too much, I want some of it back. I mean, that's pretty much where. And if not, then okay, what are you going to do with it, and what does that mean to me? The one thing I can tell you, Ricky, in acquiring companies, I'm sure you've had this experience as well. I learned this early on. When you bring in the parties, the employees from the acquiring and from the acquired, what they want to hear is, what does this mean to me? I can sit there and talk about how great this is for the organization and the company as a whole, but at the end of the day, they want to know, what does this mean to me? Does this change who I report to? Does this change what I do on a daily basis? Does this change my pay, my opportunity? What does this mean to me? And I found that I really practiced before I'd have these announcements of an acquisition. I really practiced. This is what I'm going to tell the various departmental groups, the organizational functions. You engineers, this is what it means to you. You technical architects, this is what it means to you. You account managers, you cloud support folks, your operations people. And that's what they want to hear. And I the first time I didn't do that. I learned from that mistake that people don't care about how great this is for the company. Not unless you can also accompany that with, this is what it means to you.
Because a lot of acquisitions and mergers don't work for that reason. They don't get the culture piece of this, and the people are the most important ultimately. Hey, we got less than a minute left.
Yep.
Steve Davenport developed a hell of a vision in Supertalk, didn't he?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it's a special network, one unlike anything in history. So listen, as we close this thing out, I'll give you the opportunity to have a last word.
Yeah, I just want to say how honored I am to be part of the Supertalk Mississippi family, and what a privilege it is to host this show and to take this message statewide. And the feedback has been phenomenal, and I'm very grateful for that. And I hope we are all blessed by it. I certainly am, for sure, and I hope people feel the same way.
I think you and Rhino make a great team. What a great partner he is, isn't he?
He absolutely is, and we've developed a flow that it's just, I look forward to it every day. It's a lot of fun.
Well, Gerard, thank you, my friend, for spending some time with us. We need to get together about every couple of months and just check in with each other.
Love to do that. Thank you as well, Ricky. Great job you do with your programs as well. Great job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. This has been Gerard Gibert from Middays with Gerard Gibert on Supertalk. Thank you, Gerard. I appreciate it. And everyone else, hang tight. We'll see you after the break.